The thing that just grinds my gears about all of this like cancel culture stuff that people are talking about, nowadays, is that they seem to genuinely believe that this is a problem that started in 2012 or maybe like 2010, and I'm just like, motherfucker, I mean, I'm just like, you are off by 2 orders of magnitude. If I have an enemy and I can convince him that the problem that he needs to solve in order to defeat me is 2 orders of magnitude smaller than it actually is, I don't need to do anything else, right?
My greatest example of cancel culture is Marcion.
Marcion?
The
yes, the early Christian, right?
Oh yeah,
yes.
We want to talk about cancel culture. I mean, he
now
was
tell me.
Pope.
I know the name. I know the name Marcion, but tell me what happened to him. Because you know the story.
Oh, he almost became Pope, and he believed that the God of the Old Testament was an evil God, and Jesus came in the New Testament to defeat him.
That's what it is. Yes.
It's like that. You want to talk about someone who got canceled? Oh my God!
Right. All right. I mean, but that's the thing. This idea of cancel culture assumes this model of, here we have this pure reservoir which drains downward into the filthy Augean stables of power, which somehow we've sent the entire Pacific Ocean through the Augean stables, and there's still Augean. What gives? Still smells like cow shit. And then you go back to the lake and you're like, wait, the lake smells like cow shit too, right? And I'm like, the problem, you seem to think the problem is that there are no more trout in the lake. And you're going to solve this problem by putting more trout in the lake. I'm like, no, the problem is that your lake is full of cow shit, and it's not even a lake anymore. It's a sewage lagoon. And, so, that's a level of out of the box thinking that it's well, I was about to say it's hard to get people to this level of out of the box thinking, but in a way, here's this problem that is just of unimaginable scope. And really, you're like, I think we need to throw out the whole 1900s. I like saying 1900s, by the way. I think you can do that now that it's the 20s. I'm like, everything from the 1900s has to go. And it lets you actually start thinking about, okay, what would demarxification even mean? How would it have to be done? What would be the right way to do it? Either you believe in it, obviously, or you don't. But to assume that basically demarxification will happen spontaneously through the beneficial effect of the marketplace of ideas, you're going to be waiting on that one for a long time, kid. Because basically that system is hacked. It just doesn't work. So you have to think in completely different terms. You have to think in terms of basically the real political science of Machiavelli. And in fact, if there's, the 2 books that I want to make sure I recommend today are, number 1, Hoppe's The Democracy, the God That Failed. If you're a libertarian, I would read that first. And then I would read the great book by James Burnham, The Machiavellians. Which is essentially an introduction to real political science. It was out of print for a while. Now you can get it again. I think you can get a bootleg edition on archive.org or something.
You can get it on audio. It's on audio. You can get it.
Oh, excellent.
It's a bunch of ways you can get it. Yeah.
Excellent. I hope I've helped in some ways to repopularize that book because it's an absolute classic. When you basically start thinking in those ways, what that leads you to do is it leads you to think not in terms of sort of these abstractions within the marketplace of ideas, but at least you're actually thinking about power and how it actually works. The whole principles on which, you think, like, you can't leave any kind of traditional chestnuts unexamined. Like, it's all bankrupt. You can't, go back to the Republic of the 1930s or the 1950s or something. Like, you don't think that was built on lies too? Man, it's all... The other thing about sort of escaping from this way, from the box in this way, instead of the sort of kind of gradually arguing people into, like, you know, the way libertarians debate, where they'll kind of gradually argue people sort of more toward these kind of free market ideals, et cetera, et cetera. And instead I'm like, no, actually what needs to happen is we just need to come in and just blow up your whole reality. And that is not typically thought of as a mainstream pitch. And the reason why people don't think of that as a mainstream pitch is that they're kind of stuck in this sort of Norman Rockwell republic of, you know, we're going to have our town meeting and, you know, we're going to debate these issues, and are the taxes too high, or do we need to make this investment in our, you know, our future or whatever, right? You know, we're going to participate in this policy making process as an educated nation, or at least we're going to simulate participating in that because we're actually, you know, under the instruction of Walter Lippmann's, you know, journalists, right? You know. And you know, so here's this whole thing that's sort of just as much as of a farce as the magic sword given to the Japanese emperor or whatever. I'm like, I bet that thing isn't even fucking sharp, you know. And don't tell me it's a like +7 katana of like vanquishing whole armies, and the emperor is just like, he never wants to use it. You know, I don't think it's even sharp. You know, and in fact, it might even be just a handle. Like, he's like, I've never drawn this sword, but you know, so you're like, okay, this is a farce, and what you have to convince people to do is see through, not to change their minds in this sort of linear way, but to kind of experience this, just drop out of this whole conversation entirely. So one of the things I think that makes most people despair when they're basically looking at creating political change through this traditional process of, you know, convincing their fellow statesmen to support some issue or other, is that, you know, obviously they live in idiocracy and they're not surrounded by statesmen at all.